going live. That way I can run and see.
Actually, it's on right now. I went to the site.
You go ahead and start. Okay, you can go ahead and unmute. Okay, I go ahead and can you mute
Yeah,
yours?
that's gonna be no.
Thank you. Very good. All right, call the meeting to order. Everyone, please rise for the pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Austin.
Aye.
Gotti.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lucky. Aye.
Okay, and we have no district community spotlight, and we had no comment emailed in.
Correct.
Okay, no public comment. I need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second that.
Austin.
Aye.
Gotti. Aye. Huber.
Aye.
Lucky. Aye.
All right, now we get into the real meat of the meeting, the public hearing on the 2020-2021 budget. Mr. Gustafson.
All right, good evening, everybody, and good evening, all the District Accountability Committee members that are joining on Google Meet. So I'm going to share a presentation that you will see on your computer, but will also be showing on YouTube feed. And I'll put that going here for you. Okay, so I apologize that some of the Board of Ed members will have heard this, I think, for 3 times now tonight, but it is a little bit different. It's changed each iteration from when actually we presented it. The first time back about 6 months ago to the DAC in high school in December. At that time, we were thinking that our, looking ahead, we were thinking our fiscal year 21 budget would be kind of flat. Knowing that there was talk about potential recession or at least economic downturn coming. We didn't know, however, kind of the scope of what we had coming. So what I'm going to share is what's in our proposed budget that was submitted to the board a couple weeks ago on May 27th. And it may be modified slightly prior to being put up for adoption 2 weeks from today. But this is the essence of what exists right now with the information we have right now. So most of the time we start off with talking about how do we make money as a school district. And what we've been sharing recently is that our state funding, which you can see in the purple wedge there, and our local funding, which is the blue plus the red sales tax, are typically about similar as far as percentages. But now what you see there is state funding percent, this is for next year, of 44% of our general fund budget, and the local of about 53%. Well, what's the difference? And I'm going to get into what's the change there, how's that been modified, and it's actually still an ongoing process in the legislative session right now. So when we're looking ahead to fiscal year 21, which starts on July 1st, we're expecting in our general fund at this moment about a $1.6 million decrease in revenue. And that's all of the revenue in the general fund. And we have 6 funds that we work with. The rest are listed there, and you can see all have some sort of reduced budget as far as revenue goes, with the exception of the designated purpose grants. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because we're receiving some federal money that will be in the grants fund that can't really be used for a lot of what we use our general fund for. But the bottom line is, across the board, we're looking at a pretty significant revenue reduction next year compared to this current year. If you've heard me talk before, we talk about the basic school finance formula. This is actually a really complex formula, but it boils down to number of students times dollars per student. And in this current year, our funded pupil count is 2,316 students and a funded pupil rate of $8,171 and change. So you can see almost $19 million of what we call program funding. That's not our entire general fund, but it obviously makes up the bulk of it. The next number has been adjusted many times in the last few weeks. Not on the pupil count. We're still sticking with our same projected enrollment. We believe our funded pupil count will be down to 2,264.8 students. But the funded pupil dollars for each kid be 7,737 and change. Geez, I think I might have had 7,400 in there last week. So it's come up about $300 and some since last week. But it's still, in just program funding, about a $1.4 million reduction. And as I go through, I'll kind of talk about how is the legislature getting to that number, that $7,737 per pupil. Bottom line is we're looking at a reduction. And what we'll discuss here is how we're going to deal with it. What is that going to do to our budget and some of our operations? As far as the per pupil rate, we call it, I've shared this before. Back in March, it was shared with budget and stakeholders throughout Colorado to prepare for a prolonged period of economic disruption. And who knows how long this period of economic disruption will last, but of course, we're now in it a few months. And what we're starting to see is the impact statewide of closing down for the COVID-19 pandemic. The state was projecting a month ago about a $3.4 billion revenue shortfall for next fiscal year. The legislative process took a long hiatus and it is underway. They're working on the School Finance Act right now. And it passed the House of Representatives, my understanding, this morning, and it's on its way to the Senate. And the desire is to hopefully have some sort of, or the bill actually finalized by the end of the week. So we're hoping that what we present here is pretty much where we're going to be, but who knows? It's been pretty quiet as far as the news that we've received on how they're getting to the bottom line budget numbers. And there's some confusion on why that per pupil rate that we were talking about at the low 7,000s has come up in the last 3 days. And I don't have an answer for that. It's just a mechanism they've been using to balance things. We usually also talk about local impacts. And not only do we have state impacts on our revenue, but local impacts on how property taxes are collected. Are people still paying property taxes? Or there are going to be extensions, delays, et cetera, with some of that. And we'll start knowing that here this month as we collect most of our property tax for the fiscal year in the month of June. But we'll have to certainly wait and see. And we monitor other economic impacts like sales tax, which I'll talk a little bit more about, specific ownership tax, which is tax collected on people licensing vehicles, et cetera. All of those things, of course, are projected to be lower next year than they are this year. So how about on the funded pupil count side of things? As I mentioned, we're expecting 2,264.4 students. 2,264.4. This year, our funded pupil count was 2,316. That was a little bit inflated as far as numbers go because this was the first year where we counted kindergartners as full-time FTE or funded equivalents. So that's going down next year. My understanding right now is we're going to still get to be funded full-time on kindergartners. I haven't heard that that's been changed. So hopefully now we establish sort of a trend as far as we're counting consistently and we can keep monitoring our funded pupil count. But the bottom line is it is declining. We expect that our head count will be down about 90 students and our funded pupil count about 51 students. Of course, this is all before the whole remote learning situation of the last 3 months. So we don't know exactly yet, we haven't honed in yet on what our plan will be in the fall, and which students will be counted, or there's even talk at the state level of maybe we won't be counting at the same time or the same fashion or at all. I don't know. So it's really up in the air as far as how, when kids are going to get counted for our funding in the fall. But we're going to proceed at least with our budgeting based on the numbers that we projected prior to the pandemic. This is an illustration of our historic per pupil rate for at least a handful of years, a little over a decade. And you can see this is the current fiscal year that we're just wrapping up here in the month of June, highest level ever. And we're going to drop down below the fiscal year 19 level. And we were pretty close a week ago to getting down to fiscal year 18 levels of funding. But I think a little bit that's kind of a shell game with how they're getting to the bottom line budget number that I'll show you here in the next slide. Okay, ultimately, current fiscal year compared to next fiscal year, the next fiscal year we expect to be down about $434 per pupil. So here's how, at least as the draft School Finance Act stands, that the legislature is going to balance the act and fund schools. And that's by increasing the negative factor. Okay, this is the next fiscal year 21. The current negative factor amount for Woodland Park School District is about 1.4 million. And the negative factor was implemented back here in 2011 to stabilize the state budget coming out of the Great Recession. Okay, so basically what we do is we get a number of, here's the number you're supposed to get for your funding, and it's this line right here. But we, the state, can't really fund that, so we create a factor that takes that a certain amount of money away, and what we really get is these green bars. Okay, we're at $1.4 million in negative factor. It's been decreasing. You can see our per pupil funding has been going up. Things have been going well. And what we've seen in the last few days is that that negative factor is going to double for next year and be about $2.8 million that's not flowing into our formula. So I talked about program funding or formula funding, and that's another $1.4 million that's going to be withheld. So again, we drop back down and we'll have to start whittling away at that negative factor. The cumulative impact of 11 years of negative factor for our district is about $25.5 million. Over that time, about 2.3 million per year. We were, like I said, we were making some pretty good headway, but obviously this next year is going to be different.
Ryan, can I ask a quick question?
Of course, yeah, we have.
Do you know, is Colorado still way at the bottom nationwide in terms of how they're adjusting for COVID?
I don't, the question is, do I know if Colorado is towards the bottom nationwide with regards to adjusting for COVID? And I'm not sure exactly. I haven't even seen any comparisons with funding for schools with COVID, but excuse me, these numbers are outside of COVID related funding we're going to receive. And I'm going to show you that in a little while.
And there really hasn't been a comparison that I've seen, but I've also talked to many of my cohorts from other parts of the nation. Everybody's in the same boat on this.
I did see something today that illustrated Colorado 42nd out of 51, including Washington, D.C., and just per pupil spending.
Yeah.
But of course, that was based on 2017 data, the most recent data that they have available. So, especially going into July, it's pretty irrelevant considering we're all being hit hard. So outside of that program funding, we also receive sales tax money, and it's always something we make sure we talk about and analyze and monitor. Our historic funding and growth of funding from sales tax has been about 4% a year, just a little less for going on 4 years here, which has been great. Obviously, it's hard to know exactly how sales tax is going to be impacted in the long run by not only the last 3 months, but kind of the ongoing impacts of the pandemic and different levels of comfort with folks traveling and spending money and moving around the state, country, et cetera. So right now in our budget, we're budgeting about a 1% growth, just under, in sales tax revenue for next year. One thing I do want to point out is that in the last day or so, been starting to explore potential certificate of participation refunding possibilities. Thinking ahead into the next year, and I'm going to get into kind of budget strategy for next year, but thinking ahead on where are some ways that maybe we can save money, trim money, and rates are really good right now, and there may be possibilities to do some refunding and get things a little bit more inexpensive there. So we'll just start looking into that, and then we'll see.
Brian, is that projected growth rate for the sales tax aligned with the cities? Is that where that came from? Or is that
No,
our own?
that's looking at our own numbers. The cities has actually been pretty similar. And then, of course, over the 4 years, it'd be pretty darn identical. But we measure in different time frames.
Okay.
They measure January to December, and we measure June to July. So oftentimes it looks a little bit different because we'll be reporting 6 months off somewhere. And here's how we break out our sales tax expenditures. So we bring in about $2.3 million a year. We're expecting right around 2.4 next year. And most of it goes towards compensation, which is the large blue pie. And then the green wedge is an additional piece of compensation that we're adding into sales tax spending. And that's to cover the large increase in health benefits that we're sustaining this year. So this will be our second year with Cigna. We had moved to Cigna last year, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but our rates went up significantly. So we're going to use some sales tax money to help offset that for our district staff members. So a little over 60% of our sales tax revenue goes towards compensation of staff.
I'd like to make a quick point on that for the people online that you notice that COP payment that we have there that we make. If for some reason some craziness happened and the sales tax went away and we lose all that money, you see all those cars, except for that rig one, we would still have to pay the rig one. And so that would even decrease us more. So just kind of heads up on how that works.
And Steve, I'm unable to see if people are firing questions in the chat.
I'm looking.
Okay. So if you see one, holler at me and I'll try and address it. Thank you. So what's our strategy been as we've been assembling this proposed budget? We, back in March, asked for our budget and department leaders to start making some operational adjustments and reductions. So we started there. Additionally, we paused almost all capital projects that had not been started this spring. Obviously, there's still a few things going on. If you happen to drive down Panther Way, you probably saw two things happening. We're still proceeding with the vestibule project, and that's crossing over from this fiscal year to next. That's primarily a grant-funded project, so we're continuing there. You'll also see the Panther entrance at the high school is being worked on right now, and that was a project already prioritized, budgeted, and initiated in this fiscal year, and it should wrap up in this fiscal year as well. And just by the looks of what I saw, photos and things today, it definitely had to happen. So other capital projects that were on the list have been paused. And there will be a few others going on, like I said, this year, like some electronic signs, but a significant portion of money that we've been allocating out of reserves for the past few years to take care of facilities needs, we will not allocate in the next year. Additionally, we went through most, if not all, of the accounts in our budget, which is a heck of a lot of accounts, and made reductions after analyzing a few years of expenditures where practical. And we'll analyze again this year as we continue into next year on monitoring expenditures, for instance, on utilities, natural gas, or maybe it's on gasoline for maintenance and transportation, et cetera. So we'll be monitoring accounts and expenditures continuously. Additionally, we made the decision to proceed into next year utilizing our fund balance, also known as reserves, basically to cover the shortfall that we've been expecting for the last couple of months. There are variables there, so obviously in the budget's a plan. It shows what we expect that allocation of reserves to be, but the variables that can impact it will be the per pupil reduction, and that rate, whether they settle in on that number I've already provided or it changes slightly. How, if, when we count students in October, that will be a variable. And our current year actual revenues and expenditures. That's always kind of a hard one to project. Even though it's a budget, we have a pretty good idea where we're going. Like I said, June is the one month, well, it's the largest month of the year as far as our revenue goes typically. And when June gets here, we've already pretty much completed the budgeting process and hopefully are feeling like we'll collect 100% of what we budgeted. But oftentimes we receive more than what we budgeted. I think this year we're going to generate less revenue than budgeted, but how much is a little hard to tell. And then on the expenditure side of things, honestly, I feel like we're going to spend a little less because of the last 3 months, not having had everybody on campus and working here on site than we thought we would. So those things will contribute to a fund balance number that will carry into next year and use to cover our revenue deficit for the fiscal year 21. Right now, and I'm excluding a few things like that vestibule project, the School to Work Alliance program, that's what SWAP stands for, and Medicaid. The School to Work Alliance program is sort of a flow-through program, so I'm holding some numbers out there. And Medicaid dollars that we receive have to be spent on Medicaid expenditures, even though they're in the same fund, so I kind of have to put those to a separate side. So if I take those things out, we're still looking at a revenue shortfall of just under $1.2 million. We'll have to start working on, and that will cover with reserves for fiscal year 21. So as we get into the fall, we're going to have to initiate a process to bring stakeholders together, and that's not just me, that's admin, faculty, it's parents, community members, whomever. We'll have to work on what that group looks like to start figuring out how we're going to make adjustments for fiscal year 22, knowing that we can't continue in perpetuity allocating reserves because reserves will run out to cover the shortfall. So we'll have to actually get a process in place to make adjustments to balance our budget. And my goal is to have that done for the fiscal year 23 budget. The number that we see there, 1.148 million, is quite a bit less than what we saw even a week ago. So that's a little bit encouraging. It's still a big number. But if we can get 3/4 of that adjusted permanently in our budget by this time next year, I'd feel pretty good. And why not get the whole thing? Well, maybe we can, but we also have so many variables that we just don't know about for next year at this time either. So the target right now is I'd like to see us get about 3/4 of that chewed up and then get things balanced out for fiscal year 23. So a little more talk about the fund balance or the reserves. And this is with referring to what we call our unassigned fund balance. So there are a couple things that we cannot use fund balance, a couple, I guess, allocations. We can't touch our Tabor allocation, which is 3%. And we have to set that aside. And we can't touch our multi-year obligation. We have one of those. So otherwise, and I'm just boiling this down to the general fund and the risk management fund, our target is to have on hand 90 days of general fund expenditures pretty liquid in the event of an emergency. Okay, so we have some investments. We have money with Kahlo Trust in a very liquid account. We have money with Vector Bank. We have money with Vector Wealth. That's a little less liquid, but still most of it is very liquid. We can turn it into cash pretty quick. in the case of an emergency. We target 90 days. At the end of last year's audit, we had about 116 days covered. So obviously a little bit above where we want to be, but that's obviously a fairly conservative and safe number. But it was also 21 fewer than we had at the same time in fiscal year 18. So we've actually initiated a plan over the past few years to spend down the reserves on things like capital improvements, et cetera. Hey, last week this time, this number was a little bit higher, but I'm still adjusting projected actuals that will impact this. Right now, where I feel we'll end up at next year this time, we get to the end of, I'm sorry, that's for this year. As we get through June, I feel like we'll be at about 99 days. So still in good shape, 3 months and a little over a week. Next year this time, assuming we spend everything we budget, which I still haven't seen us do, assuming our revenue is exactly as budgeted, which I haven't seen that either, we would be at about 2.5 months of fund balance. Still doable, but obviously a little lower than we want to be. So that's the plan, to try to really get our budget balanced in about a 2-year period. A little bit more, just some other comparisons. Hopefully, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out, but hopefully it's kind of making sense and putting the picture together. I expect we'll receive $23.5 million in revenue this year. Next year, we're only budgeting 22.3. That's 5%, about 5.2% less. The number that we're budgeting for next year's revenue is about 6.7% less than the current year's budget. A week ago, these numbers were 10 and 8.5. So it's been changing quickly and without a ton of information. So right now, if I had to submit this for approval today, we would be cutting our budget about 5.5%. So just for, well, I'll talk a little about compensation. Right now, there are no increases in compensation for staff included in the budget. That's certainly, we're looking at a number of cutting well over $1 million, $1.5 million. It's not there. We're going to continue to monitor, of course, how things go. We've already met with our Meet and Confer Large Circle. That's our negotiating group. And we've talked about this. They've seen this presentation and they know the situation. And we'll evaluate again as we get through the October count on the budget as a whole and compensation as a whole as well. When I look at budget numbers of 5.5% reductions, I think in my time here, which is quite a while now, I've only seen 1 year where we've increased salaries greater than that amount. So while 5.5 or 5.2 doesn't seem like a lot, you know, if we put ourselves in that collecting the paycheck set of shoes for a little bit, well, that'd be a nice raise to have on a year-to-year basis. And on the other end, it really hurts when that goes away. So hopefully that's as bad as it gets. And then maybe we have some hope and the economy starts turning around pretty quickly. So let's glance at what our expenditures look like through all of the funds in the proposed budget. As you can see, this first line, the general fund, overall, about $2.2 million. Remember, that includes program funding that I pointed out and other items as well. And that's obviously, it's a big number. The designated purpose grants fund right here is the only one that's going up a little bit. I'm going to get into talking about that shortly. A couple other things to note, I already touched on it, that our health insurance went up significantly. We're also looking at an increase in transportation costs for next year. So all of this while we still have the cost of doing business. And utilities are going up, subscriptions for technology and software, and all, you know, our student information system, accounting systems, those things keep going up. But they don't like to hold on and just stay in place as we face budget cuts.
So like for health insurance, 5%, 10%, 20? How big of a?
Was
was it?
about, it was quoted at
13?
15.
Yeah.
I think we got to about 9, 8. Yeah, significant. Fortunately, we still are able to provide an annual benefit to our employees of just about $7,300. Those that elect to use and subscribe to the health and dental benefit. So that's still another piece of compensation that we definitely need to make sure we keep in mind and communicate about, and that's significant. Yeah, I've been waiting to hear what's going to happen with para, because we heard some rumors that maybe these mandatory contributions were going to be deferred for a little bit, but it doesn't sound like there's much movement there. So we're still planning on the statutory contribution for the district to increase 0.5% up to 20.9 effective July 1st. Again, cost of doing business. We have to contribute about 21% to everybody's public employees retirement account on behalf of our staff members. And each staff member is going to be contributing another 1.25% out of their gross income into their retirement accounts. Okay, that's statutorily mandated to help increase the solvency of para and make sure that there are funds there for those of us in the system when we retire. If I hear something different, I'll make sure and adjust in the budget, but right now it doesn't sound like that's taking much traction. How we spend our money, most of it goes towards compensation. Last year at this time, we were below 75% going to salaries and benefits. It's obviously gone up, and a lot of that is because we've taken money out for capital projects and maintenance and those kinds of things. We're one of the few districts that in the other year has our debt service. We don't have a bond fund anymore. We manage our debt on a year-by-year basis with certificates of participation, and they come out of the general fund. Otherwise, this large section would be much greater and closer to probably 80 or more percent for salaries and benefits, which is pretty standard in public school. And when you break things out, these are our programs, we call them. That's not really, I mean, most people would think programs, that's like co-curriculars and all that kind of stuff. Well, when I'm talking about programs, I'm talking about categories in our chart of accounts by which we have to align things. And the instructional, that's where we spend our most money. That's the direct interaction in the classroom, and almost half of our budget is directed there. So for the board, all these little charts will be in the narrative that usually comes with your budget. The budget you have today, again, this time, I didn't include the narrative because that's going to change. So I'm going to write one and one only and put it in for adoption. But the numbers that are the actual budget are there. And then they'll have some of this backup documentation in the narrative as well. Nancy was asking earlier about some COVID funding. And actually, we have received a significant amount of money, and Stan received 2 more pots of money from federal dollars to help with COVID-19 related expenditures. And this is from what's called the CARES Act. One pot of money is called ESSER, and I forget the acronym. I think it's Elementary, Secondary School Emergency Relief or something like that funding. And we expect to receive about $218,000. We have to apply and provide a pretty specific budget when we apply. And we have until the end of December to do so, but we're trying to get that application going. And there's a lot of guidance. Well, there's not a lot of guidance. There's going to be a lot of strings on how we spend some of these dollars. Here are some of the suggestions: modifications to comply with health orders, whatever those may be at the time. Our preparation for opening school, as well as what if we have to close school again. Okay, that's what this money is for. In addition, what do we need to do? How do we need to spend money to protect health of our folks that are here? And maybe that's equipment, maybe that's facilities, maybe that's nursing care. no-touch thermometers, all kinds of things. Addressing mental health needs. What supports do we need to have in place to continue or re-engage distance learning if necessary? And delivery and increased provision of school nutrition. The expectation at most districts is that the free and reduced percentages for free and reduced lunch will go up, which would be great because then we can continue to help folks with meals and with some federal reimbursements. And there is a small allocation for administrative and accounting expenses. So we're working currently on what are some of the expenditures that we can put in this pot of money. The other fund is called the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and I thought it was called something different, but I got my acronyms mixed up. So we're going with Coronavirus Relief Fund. And we've actually already received $1 million. So it's kind of funny that we have to go through this arduous application for $218,000, but this million showed up in the bank account and without a lot of guidance on how to use it yet. So it's there. And one of the things that the board will take action on here in a little bit is a supplemental budget request to have that money available to use in this current fiscal year. So from today through June 3rd. And that's, like I said, a little over $1 million. The suggested expenditures are similar to the ESSER that I showed you previously, but there will be some more guidelines and some more, I guess, guardrails accompanying these funds, and we're still waiting for that guidance.
What I heard today is it looks like those guidelines are supposed to come out tomorrow. Be more specific on that.
And we're expecting there will be a third pot of money, then called that's the GEARS money, the governor's, I don't know, governor something. He's going to allocate more money.
Governor's money.
And it's a great problem to have, but the kind of the issue with grants is they always have rules, which is good. We have to have rules, but the specific ways we can spend them, that we can't just lump it into our program funding and our general fund for just operating.
So we can't use it to supplement for people funding.
Potentially.
Because to me, that's like COVID impact.
The ESSER money, potentially, as far as maybe it's covering some one-year-only salaries for nurses or additional support staff in classrooms that have on simultaneous in-person and remote learning going on. Don't really know yet. And we don't know much at all about this new pot of money that might be coming. So, and the catch with the Coronavirus Relief Fund is that's $1 million that we have to use or lose by December 30th of this year. Some are speculating that this is only funding for if you aren't returning to school as normal, I guess whatever normal is now in the fall. And so I know some districts are a little leery of trying to spend these dollars. We're trying to itemize how are things going to look and what things can we use this for right now. So we're trying to build our ideas and then our budgets for how we would use these funds. So stay tuned. We're learning as they provide guidance, and I hope, like Steve said, we get that soon. So we know what to do. And we're rolling through the important budget dates. Obviously, tonight's the budget public hearing. That's the information you've just received. The budget is scheduled to be adopted on June 24th and must be adopted by June 30th. And our new fiscal year starts on July 1st. And with that, I will open it up to questions. So what questions regarding the budget do we have?
So far, one of the questions asked is, so what are we doing to make sure we're taking care of our hourly employees? And I responded on that really, we're working really hard not to cut anybody. We're too low the way it is. And so we're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen. And we say that, but one of the things Brian pointed out is 1.25% increase in parent. That actually does make a dent in your salary. If it's a little more out of insurance, that also makes a dent. So as much as we we're trying to keep it the dollar value even, but we also understand that is a little dent into that. And we don't like that, but you saw the situation. The great news that Brian presented is that we assume 2 to 3 million, and the cut we're going to have to make is huge, but it's not quite 2. And at least that's the way it is today. Who knows what it is by Friday? Because their goal is to be done by Friday. And so we'll see how that is. I haven't need to unmute myself. Sorry about that, guys. And but we're that's really the only question. Any other questions out there from you guys?
And just a little extra on addressing how are we supporting hourly employees, that question that was in the chat. We will continue to comply with any minimum wage laws as well. And the minimum wage has been increasing by 90 cents a year for the past handful of years. And it's scheduled to go up by the Consumer Price Index in January. Obviously, we don't know what that is right now, but we'll have to adjust for that in our mid-year budget revision. But we'll continue to do that and monitor things. We're going to keep working at it, trying to figure out how we can pass on as much as possible.
I see a question here. Can this presentation be made available electronically? Do you mean Brian's like PowerPoint type thing, or what are you talking about there? Can you hear?
I believe I heard her say the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kershid, I have a section in our business services part of our website where I've been posting presentations from earlier in the year as well. So there's a sales tax presentation there. There's a presentation we gave to our staff in April there, and I will post this there also. And again, none of this is finalized, but yes, we'll put it there for review.
In terms of making up the million that we're getting less, is there a rough proportion in terms of fund balance? Obviously, payroll is a good chunk of this, and programs. Is there is that the three? Like I said, just curious if there's a.
The question is, and I'll say it for these guys too, is over $1 million we're going to have to deal with. How much of that is fund balance? How much is that other cuts? And we're looking at every position we have. We look to make sure, is there a way we can take care of those needs without hurting students, and make sure that we're able to go on. And so part of Brian's budget that doesn't show is really because of our reduction in numbers of students, you also have a reduction in the needed number of teachers or support staff. And so we have made those adjustments. It's probably right now about $500,000, but that's already been figured into the budget. That didn't count the million, that 1.4 million that we're going to have to take out of fund balance. So that's where we are right now. So come around September, we know we're going to have to put together committees, some of these guys out here, teachers, administrators, everybody, and start working on and start looking at some hardline cuts, because we know it isn't going to be much better the next year. It might even be worse. And so where we still have some fund balance, and Brian showed you there where we're going down from 99 days to possibly 75, that's lower than we really feel comfortable with. And so we really need to make, there'll be some tough decisions to make heading into that. Does that answer your question, Corbin?
Yeah, and so proportionally, I'm assuming half of that might be the staffing part, and the other quarter is fund balance. The other quarter is
we know that'll be everybody involved with that. We don't know, and wouldn't it be neat if we could find a way where we did hit salaries and people? That would be really ideal, because that's what makes the biggest difference with our kids is our staff league. And so, we're gonna really work hard at it. If there's obvious number differences, then we're gonna have to look at what does it look like when we open the year. I'm gonna cover a little survey that was done a little earlier this last week, and who shows up and who doesn't. How do we educate people who choose to stay at home because they're still a little afraid? And we can't. I understand that fear. So we're what does that cost? We'll probably use some of that CARES money for that, but then moving forward, how do we handle those things? So there's a lot of questions that we really don't have answers for as we're rolling along. But a lot of those cuts, this isn't going to be Brian and I sitting down slashing things. We want everybody in this together and go from there, because there may be some really good ideas that we don't come up with.
Just a couple other comments on that. It'll be important that we reflect back on what are our priorities, right? And this group actually provided priorities 6 months ago when it comes to our strategic planning pillars and those kinds of things. So we'll certainly have to keep those in mind as we engage a group. And I like to use the word adjustments because it may not always be a cut. Where are places where we can generate additional revenue, like a sales tax or something. So, adjusting to get it balanced. Hopefully, we can find some positive numbers of that as well.
One of the things that I won't cover later that I have on my superintendent's report, what we're talking about is, and Brian mentioned there's some governor's money. Well, that isn't a lot. The 500 million, we ended up with 1.17 out of that. He's talking 33 million plus a $3 million for teacher recruitment. When you divide that up among per pupil, that isn't going to impact us very much. Having visited today, was on a call, and it was kind of a neat thing that we had our senator on board with that, which is a really a neat thing. I don't get the opportunity very often to hang out with Senator Bennett, but he talked about they're still trying to work on maybe some more CARES money, and he felt optimistic with that. I'm going to guess 50-50 on that, but I'd be shocked if we're another 500 million, and a lot of that goes through our this Department of Education as well. So we'll see. Not just our state, but the feds.
Just as a quick follow-up, I mentioned the prioritizations that we went through in December. I'll just share those with you right now. We went through, we had our 4 pillars from our strategic plan, and I'm sharing these with the board, but I'll talk about them for the group at home. The 4 pillars from the strategic plan, and we also threw in safety and security and deferred maintenance to get some input on if we had to go through and actually go into a difficult budgeting situation. Well, there we are. How would we prioritize things? And you can see those top 3 are all pretty close. That group, actually top 4, really valued in order: educator talent, then safety and security, social emotional growth, academic success, then followed by deferred maintenance and communication. So those are the things I've had in mind as I've been going through scrubbing the budget, trying to at least get us started into next year. And they'll provide us a spot to launch for our conversations as well. Are those still our priorities? Valuing educator talent at the top, safety and security, etc. So just thought I'd share those with you as well.
And Brian, one thing we didn't really talk a lot about today, but it's part of it, is we do have some things that are happening capital improvement wise but that's grant driven and things that we budgeted for this year. Next year, as far as big projects go, we'll finish up our vestibules because some of that has to come out of our money and not just grants. And other than that, we're not planning on any big projects. We'll deal with things that break, and because things break, that's just part of life. Entropy happens, and so we'll take care of those. But There's a lot of things we love to do. Dream projects I have, things I thought we could start rolling on this summer that we know we can't do. It's frustrating, but it's probably the right thing to do. We need to hold on.
Brian, is there any input from the school districts into that ESSR or the CARES, and how that spending can be used? I'm just wondering if we could provide input. 'Cause I feel like if we're doing budget cuts because of what's happened, and then they're providing money at the state or fed level, then it feels like you should be able to apply that to your budget shortfalls.
We wish.
No, I know, that's why I'm asking the question, is it sounds like there are a lot of strings, but it's very tough to do that. But I just wonder if you had any leverage to input, or is it too late, or is it just not, did it not
Well,
happen?
it's important to remember it's federal money, so it's gone through a lot to get here. And they're not often going to just turn money loose without the rules first. I think we can provide questions, and I think the input has been, at least through legislators, on here, what are the needs? Earlier in the spring, CDE reached out and was asking, like, what do you need? And that was kind of the input process. What are your needs? And that was like March 16th. Wow, we don't even know what we need yet. We're just getting into this. But we answered, and other districts did as well, with what are those needs. And I think that information was utilized to build some of the parameters on this level.
And it was, and things we needed March 16th, we don't need today. And so that's part of the confusing part is, it was technology, bandwidth, connectivity. Those are the main things. Through some of our surveys that we had, we've taken care of a whole lot of that. That isn't the main need. A lot of it's social emotional. And then a lot of it for us is backfilling salary. That's what we really love to do. But the rules will come out tomorrow in all likelihood, and they probably will not include that. That being said, Senator Bennett and quite a few other people are trying to work on loosening that up some. At least maybe if they have another round, maybe loosening that up a little bit more. But they do understand that it's tricky to be able to use. And one of the unfortunate things is if they had said yes, you can use that to do that, we might be having a state legislature now trying to cut us even more, knowing we'd have that to put into salary, and it wouldn't be any help. And so they want to make sure that we're able to open up this next year and do the things we need to do to make sure school happens effectively. What we did this year was nice to be able to do. But next year, if we have to have people at home, it can't be 2-3 hours a day. It has to be on a regular schedule, 6 hours a day, and rolling through that. So so parents who may think this is great, I have my kid on there for 2-3 hours, and life is good. And it can't be that for everybody, for us or anybody in the state. It's really seriously got to have to be on schedule what we do. At school, and will likely be by that teacher being filmed at the same time if we have to go that route, and we will probably have to go that route for a certain percentage based upon the survey that we see.
That's a good point. Hopefully, enough noise will be made that was done for the PPP loan, because it was originally an 8-week window, and enough businesses said, what do we do to bring back people for 2 months if they're already on unemployment? Bring them back, send them back. So they've extended that to 24 weeks. So it'd be nice if some of that clamoring, maybe from schools, would reach up to the top. But we can only hope.
It's important to remember too that this is one-time money, and so we have to be very careful about what we use it for. It gets to be really dangerous and slippery using one-time money for recurring expenditures.
Yeah, sure.
And we're certainly going to experience situations where we buy things one time. Maybe just an example, we have to upgrade some laptops. I don't know what it is, but let's just say we have to buy a whole bunch of laptops. Okay, that's one time right now, but in 5 years, when those are now obsolete, this money doesn't cover that replacement of those things that we acquired here either. So even those, there's a little bit of element of recurring nature to even buying stuff.
Sure.
And part of that is, just a reminder for you guys, we have to have that 1.17 million spent by December 31st. And so it isn't like we can carry, anything we don't spend, we send back. And so we're working on that. We've got a big list and we're trying to pare it down and try to take care of things and spend it as wisely as we can, as quick as we can. But yeah, they're definitely parameters.
What other budget-related questions do we have? Hearing none, I will put my email in the chat. I really appreciate everybody joining, and of course, all of you listening and helping us navigate this. And please forward questions as you get them. And like I said, I hope there aren't many differences 2 weeks from today, but I anticipate we'll have some differences on the expenditure side of things as we're really trying to dial in what our salaries are almost at that moment as we continue to have some transition of folks coming and going. So there will be slight differences there. But again, thank you, and I'll let you have it back.
Thank you, Brian. It was excellent presentation as always. Okay, so next we have the strategic planning, educator talent. Mr. Garrett.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Thanks for letting me come in tonight. I know it's always hard to follow Brian's presentation, I'm sure, so. And I don't know if you noticed anything this year, but this year ended up really weird. So it ended up weird even in terms of the educator talent piece. So I did put a packet in front of you with some basic information. I don't want to go through it word for word, but I'll answer any questions at the end. But I do want to highlight a couple of different pieces. So we start with on the educator talent piece. I just thought it was important to show the different type of openings, or how many people left during this school year compared to how many people left during the previous year. So you can see on that first one, up till yesterday. So I printed this yesterday, and then we had a resignation today. So this number is off, but I didn't intentionally lie to you. So it's just a matter of printing. But the departing staff for this from fiscal year to July 1st to up till yesterday, 66 different staff members had left our employment during that time. And it broke down 34 classified, 32 certified during that time. Obviously, the certified ones were in the most recent time, probably the last 2 months. But on the classified staff side, that's a constant turn each month, each week, really. So the natural question is probably, well, what would that turnover rate be? It's approximately 25%. And then the next question would be, what does that compare to other years? Well, I can give you last year was closer to 30%. I cannot give you years before that because, one, I wasn't in this chair, and two, I haven't had a chance to look at all those numbers yet to figure out where our staffing was. But typically in discussions with others, it seems to be pretty close to about the same, which is unfortunate. We don't like to see those numbers. Looking a little bit further, you can see that kind of alluding to what Steve was talking about earlier, when we have different staffing needs that come up, do we evaluate those and see, okay, is this something that we can put on hold right now? Is this something we can absorb? What does that look like? And if you look at the situation currently, we're sitting on 6 positions currently on hold. So those were ones that were staffed in our formula, but have come up and we're on hold for until we figure out what that looks like budget-wise. So 3 certified, 3 classified staffs in that situation. Remaining positions above that, you can see that we have 8 certified staff positions. That's kind of a tricky one because some of those are not within the budget. They are grant dependent. So as we're waiting for the state to finish up their grant discussion and figure out which ones we have, we can move on some of those positions. So the total number of positions open, the total number of positions on hold could change significantly in the next week or two. Okay. Just wanted to highlight a couple of the accomplishments. I think earlier in the year, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were able to show you the video that Stacy put together to help recruit staff coming into our buildings and into our school district. I think that was in February, I believe, that we saw that. You can't remember it? It's that impactful. So, oh, was that long ago? Okay. Well, it's really good. We could show it if we wanted to. If you wanted to see it real quick, it's like I don't know, 45 seconds, or that's up to you. I'm not sure.
I think since February, we've gone about 3 years.
That's true, it does feel like that,
Yeah.
that's for sure. So, if we don't want to, queue that up, I don't have the ability in front of me, but maybe somebody else does. If we don't want to queue that up, that's fine. You can check that out on the website, but it's a professionally done video that Stacy put together. It's really, really nice. Wanted to kind of put an asterisk by that expanded job fair attendance one, because we had expanded that to go to a lot of them, and then, well, they all got canceled, right? So it was interesting. I did get to go to one that was specifically for social workers, because that's traditionally a hard position to fill. So we went and targeted that, and that was the night before everything went down. So, man, I like scrubbed in bleach after I heard all that. I didn't know what was going on. So, apparently that worked, so it worked out pretty well. And then the other thing that we did for this particular year is we did expand some screening questions available to buildings for hiring managers. It was kind of a neat instead of a generic application that went out. Hiring manager, if they chose to do so, were able to really focus in on some questions and some essay pieces that would draw the attention to what they felt valued in their buildings. So instead of just a generic application, you try to weed it out through some interviews. We took that a little bit further and said, okay, well, what questions would you like, if they chose to do so, what questions would you like in the essays or in the application specific for your building, to try to really hone in on the faculty members that could fit their buildings. So that was a neat situation. Next year, we'd like to continue the expansion of targeting recruiting efforts. I'd like to get a little bit more specific in terms of which recruiting fairs we go to. So an example, it's very hard to go up to CSU. I love going up to CSU, don't get me wrong, and we have had some success getting some people out of there. But CSU is not a very fruitful ground for us in terms of teaching, because most of the people that are at CSU, they want to stay in northern Colorado. So we don't get a whole lot of that. In addition, it's also difficult when we have like math openings, for example, to go to a college recruiting fair that turned out 0 math teachers. That makes no sense. So we want to focus in on those colleges that are turning out those specifics that we need and attend those fairs. So that would be a strategy that we employ. Moving that. Also, we'd like to develop some additional metrics for new staff in addition to our educator effectiveness, to see 1 year later if we did attract high quality staff. That's going to be an important metric, I think. This year, that's difficult to do, obviously, when everything's shut down in March. So that's kind of the nutshell on the hiring piece. You can see induction as the next page. Nothing real earth-shattering on that piece. Just give you the numbers on what we did, what the numbers were for participation. Some goals on that is we have to get a state-approved program for induction for administrators. And there's a difference, right? Principal license and administrator license are two totally different things. So we have some folks that are having their administrator, meaning they do special ed directors, they do other directorships, superintendents, things like that. They also have initial certificates, and so that we need to create induction programs for those folks. So that'll be one that we have to apply to the state for. And then every year, part of our induction program that we have that's been approved by the state is that every year we have to take a survey and get feedback on the effectiveness of that induction from the participants. That's a rule. And then we have to reapply every 5 years and that kind of. So one of the things that we're really focusing on is taking the feedback from our participants. And those included updating the topics. Our topics were pretty standard for the last few years. They wanted to see some updating on that. A little bit more personalization. Sometimes it's hard if you think about induction, teaching the science and the skills and the craft of being, say, a special education teacher versus the science and skills and the craft of being, say, a third grade teachers. There's a lot of overlap, but there's a lot of specialization. So we want to make those things more personalized and use of online tools to help with that. And then there was a great feedback on it would be helpful if we were increase our evaluation and selection of mentors. We had a few that just felt that the mentor might have just been assigned and not vetted as much as they needed to be. That's great feedback, so that's something we'll be doing that. We talked a little bit about educator effectiveness and how it changed. So essentially, Governor Poles on April 1st, when he made his first executive order, basically took the existing rules around educator effectiveness and put them on hold, really. So There wasn't a set number of observations needed to be completed anymore. Timelines went away. Essentially, it was districts, how do you want to do this through the year? And in fact, they're still working on some guidance on what they want to do with first year and second year probationary teachers. We as a district had made the decision that we wanted to honor and help our staff members who were in what we would call a transition period. So those that were about to go from probationary to non-probationary or vice versa, right? And there's steps that happen in the district. So those that were in transition periods, so those that are on year 2, and this would be their 3rd year, we didn't want to just hold them not having a final effectiveness rating because they wouldn't be able to earn their non-probationary status. Likewise, if we had some that were about to lose their non-probationary status, we didn't want this year of hard work that they were preparing and improving to not mean anything. So that handful of staff, and I want to say it's about 9 total across the district, they're the only ones that got a final effectiveness rating. So they went through the entire process. So they went through the rubric and the student scoring and all that. So we were able to submit that. All other staff, they were evaluated this year based simply on the assigned rubric and the end of year conference with their evaluator or supervisor. We felt it was important to, even though we said we don't have to have a final effectiveness rating, it's still important to evaluate and have those conversations about how we can improve, what things are great, what we can build on, and have those constructive conversations that are supposed to be generated from that rubric. And so all of our staff members ended with that discussion with their supervisors using just the rubric. They won't get credit on their final effectiveness rating for this year. But again, we go back to a couple of things. Those that are already non-probationary, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a moot point because the final effectiveness rating are very important. But if they're in their non-probationary year, it's not going to change next year. So they're fine. The question was going to be the consecutive years for probationary, right? So I believe the state, and it hasn't come out yet, but I believe CDE is going to come back with the fact that they're going to count this as a year. So instead of being 3 years you have to get, they might say that people in these situations have to be down to 2 more years. So not count it in terms of an effective rating score, but not punish them, but not count the year either. So I believe that's where they're landing. I have not gotten guidance on that yet. So some goals going forward for educator effectiveness. So one of them is to update our evaluation committee. Not that I don't enjoy the people that have served so long, and those are going to stay on there as much as we can. But I think it's time to refresh and get some different voices and some views in there. And that's been expressed across the district as well. So we're going to update that with recruiting some new members. I think it's important that we revisit our values statement in terms of why do we do the educator effectiveness, what do you find valuable. And then, like weighting standards, do they need to be weighted equally, or is one set of standards more important to our school identity than another? Talk about those type of things. We want to get to 100% compliance. That should be a goal every year, right? We want to get to that. So to clarify that statement a lot, we are 100% compliant in terms of completion. Sometimes we're missing components in arbitrary deadlines, so the deadlines that are not imposed by the state but imposed by our district. We want to get to compliance with that for sure. And definitely scheduling collaboration and time with our building administration to calibrate philosophy and practice across our district. That'll be a goal going forward. Moving to the investment in human capital, we were fortunate to have that district wellness coach for the 2nd semester of this year. Unfortunately, that position's been put on hold going forward. But the feedback from all of our staff, that opportunity to meet with, it was Penny Better, had the opportunity to meet with her and work with her. It was an outstanding benefit. They were really getting a lot. And I'd like to personally say, she's not here, but just shout out to Penny for all the hard work that she put into this particular program.
I have a question about that.
Of course.
So since she was the art teacher, and if her position is now put on hold, what happens to Penny?
She's our teacher.
She's our teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so we didn't lose her.
No.
Okay.
Just the position of the wellness piece
Got it.
has been taken.
Yeah, just
Yep. No, great question. Thank you. So that's kind of what we did with the district wellness. I wanted to give a quick update on the ASCD Activate that we purchased for our staff. You can see kind of some different things in there. One of the most important ones is that one of the reasons why we established this program is so that we could help our teachers meet their English language learner requirements. And we've actually had 3 people complete that. And when I look online at who's enrolled over the summer, that number is going to be quite a bit higher come the fall. So that's going to be a great benefit that we were able to offer our staff. Goals for that and the investment in human capital. One is, I don't know if you've been following the READ Act. I know Linda's been presenting on that quite a bit. And part of the READ Act is a requirement that teachers in the grades K through 3 receive 45 hours of professional development in that reading specific. Here's the tricky part of that. When the English language learner came out, it was also 45 hours. And they gave you basically one full cycle. So without getting into the details of it, essentially you had 5 years to get 45 hours, right? The READ Act says they have to have 45 hours by the following fall. So, and to make it even more complicated, it's not attached to their licensing. So, yeah, that look is what I give all the time when I get off the phone and go. That doesn't make any sense, but I have my mask on so they can't see that I make the look, so it's all good. But we'll be creating some programs, hopefully with collaboration with Linda, to make that happen. The goal is to increase the ASD Activate usage, obviously through this year, it's kind of limited. We didn't have it the full year, and it's new, so people getting used to that and want to increase that. Communication, I think we put out, this year we started putting out an HR newsletter with various information, things, everything from benefits to, we have a contest or whatever, the basic employment information, kind of neat. We average about 379 views per month, so that was pretty cool. That's more than we have staff, which means some of them, probably Brian visited twice, maybe 3 times.
Yeah, I voted.
Yeah, he did, yeah. So Brian is a cheater on that. It didn't pay off for him, but he did do that. So, all right, and then finally at the end, we've gone through the year, we looked at the improvement and what we do with our exit surveys and exit interviews. You can see our exit surveys, there was 21 respondents this year. So, quick math, a third of our people that leave actually do the survey. That's, unfortunately, we'd like to get that quite a bit higher. But you can see that those charts that you have on the next couple pages are from the exit interview. So you can see the responses that kind of to go with that. Break it down by location, by position, and then kind of the length of employment. The reasons for leaving, that's always an important one to look at. It's kind of funny because you can look at those numbers and we can draw some general conclusions, but sometimes people choose 2 different categories, so it's kind of hard to know exactly what the leading one is. But like it was last year, this year again, relocation seems to be the #1 reason why people are leaving. So that's not to say that we don't have other issues. We don't need to build on things, we do. And then you can see the different types of responses in terms of excellent and good with the cooperation, communication type of questions that are posed to them with their district, their department. In general, if you look at I won't go through each slide there, obviously, but the general trend is, and this would make sense, is that the further away you get from your specific job site, the more uncertain these things are in terms of like cooperation and communication. When you're talking about within your department or within your team, the communication cooperation is very high. And I would expect that. We would expect that. As it moves further away, it never gets bad, but it does lend itself for us to look at that areas of improvement. And then one thing that I wanted to point out for sure, and I think this is an important piece, on the very last one, the cooperation between other agencies and BOCES. I didn't include last year's graph on that. I can dig that up for you, but I can tell you that the number of good, if this graph were last year, that number would be on needs improvement. So the vast improvement that we've made between our cooperation between other agencies, BOCES, SWAP, et cetera, that's probably been the most marked improvement over the year. And I think that has a lot to do with some placement, some decisions that were made from
Kind of having Rhonda here pretty much full time has really helped us a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of the quick overview of kind of what happened in this world this year. I think we'll ask any questions or answer any questions.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just about the last chart, the information that you're getting from people that are leaving. How are you, or what's the communication plan back to the leaders on that? So if someone leaves from your building or something, do they get that feedback from you? Do we share that or?
We do. We actually move it through Steve first. Steve goes to this, and Steve and I spend time talking about trends and things that we want to address going forward. And then a lot of the other types of trends that I share with Steve will come from the personal exit interviews themselves. So those are separate from the surveys. And those are highly confidential, so I don't put that in any chart form, of course. But we definitely share that with Steve, and then we will develop some plans on what we want to do with that.
But it did give me great information. And Dylan and I visited, and there's definitely some things I'm targeting. And so we'll, but it was good information, and it was very helpful.
Are we doing the exit interviews on 100% of our people that are leaving?
Unfortunately, it's on a request only right now. We try to. In the conditions of employment, it is a request only. This year, there was 9. So it's interesting. The vast majority of people, I will tell you, when you reach out and say, do you want to do this, they're very happy with what happened. They're just moving for whatever reason or retiring or whatever. Sometimes Steve and I sat in on one extra interview, and it was glowing, man. The person just wanted to talk for an hour about the great things, which is great. I got thirsty, but it was great. And then a lot of other times, as you can well imagine, there's a lot of interviews where it's very personalized, and a lot of specific details come out to things. And when those arise,
That's helpful.
What's that?
It's helpful.
It's helpful. And we share those trends, and we share that information with Steve. Endeavor with the examples of, hey, Nancy said, blah, 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 we need to fix it. That doesn't happen.
And then some of that will get passed along. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I just have one brief thing on the investment in human capital. The district wellness coach, I mean, we all got to sit in, she shared, and just glowing reviews left and right. And a lot of staff are using, or we're using just her resources. And when I think about the federal funds that are coming in through the CARES Act, I know this might be something that you're already looking at, but it seemed to me there was a stated use for that fund, the monies related to mental health and wellness. Do you know if that's specifically towards students, or could it expand into being utilized for the use of just the wellness related to the staff?
No, it's beyond that. And actually, that's something that I thought of. When we didn't move that position forward, we realized we were going to take the loss that you saw. But one of the things, and I was going to cover a little later, but one of the rules, and we'll find out more specifics tomorrow, probably, is what they said, is that if it was in the budget on March 27th, then you have to spend that money on that. And so
for this fiscal year.
Yeah, for this fiscal year, and so things that we already had on there, we can't spend money on. And it has to be something new moving forward, and which is a little frustrating, but who knows, we saw the value in that as well. And I have every intention of bringing that back as soon as we can. And but if there was some money allocated, where we can look to those, that would be wonderful. But right now, we have a couple of limitations on that. And I'll hit on that briefly again during my report. But that's where that, the great question, and that is because we did see a lot of value in that.
You had a way to rename it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, this will be
Trust me, I know you guys will do everything that you can. That was a great question.
That will apply to this year. It's not budgeted next year, and some pots of money can be used for one-year-old staff. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Del. Excellent presentation.
Not just as good as Brian's, just for the record.
What's that?
Just as good good as Brian's.
Well, I appreciate that
Yeah.
in this public setting. Thank you.
Thanks for saying that, because it would have been a confrontation later.
I'd like to see that.
No, you wouldn't. You would wipe me out.
All right, next we move forward to reports, superintendent report.
All right, just gonna let you know, our high school graduation, I couldn't have been more thrilled. With the administrator team, the high school staff, our security team, field maintenance crew, holy cow. They were just wonderful. And to be able to, and I put down here, they pulled off graduation for our class of 2020 like no other, literally like no other. And hopefully we won't have to do it exact like that again, but there's some things that happened that we probably will want to do again on that. So it was really neat. One of them is here, the other is online. There's so many of those things. Did you?
Oh, we heard the parade.
Oh, the parade, yes.
Oh, and my daughter thought it was the most awesome thing. So she ran to the corner and she's like, "Do we get to do this when we're seniors?" I said, "I don't know. This is pretty cool."
Yeah, that was pretty
It was
huge.
pretty cool.
It was
Friday
really
night
cool,
parade.
and it's something we may want to get. Now, we probably will have more regulations on when you can ride on top of your car,
That's right.
when you can hang out.
I was gonna say, think about that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at this. Ooh, might have missed that one.
That's great.
Yeah, but they were going 5 miles an hour, so, well, we were pretty good there. So anyway, and our sheriff's department, the police department were wonderful. The police took care of the parade for us. The sheriff's kind of took care of it on the field, and it was just good. And so we appreciate you guys supporting that and allowing us to move forward, and we're gonna learn some things and that it could be pretty neat for our kids in the future. We had a lot of students take advantage for our summer school and be able to move their grades forward. We had like 49 kids so far at the high school level move the grades up. And what was neat about that is we have some kids that are, we have some staff lead that are paid to do that. But we also have some who aren't, who are still reaching out to their kids and working with their kids and moving them forward. And it's just a neat deal. And I'll ask Tina probably, Tina's by the way is in the other room. Help watch and make sure we're good here. Hi, Tina. And maybe to run the kind of that grade report like I did first semester, because I think things have turned out really well. And kids, you know, if they hadn't had that, the grade would have been locked in and they're done, and you go retake the thing next year. So I appreciate the hard work of our kids and the hard work of our staff to be on that. And there's some still things we have to tweak. We know it. We're working on it. But it's really, I really appreciate the kids' effort on keeping going on that. So summer school looked completely different this year for a variety of reasons. You can see some of the upcoming dates. There aren't a whole lot of things on our calendar there, but that affect you. Opening next school year, though, one of the things that you have somewhere in here it is your reintegration plan survey results. So we did a little survey and for our parents and staff lead. You can kind of see where that lies. And so we're going to have a couple committees, a secondary committee, an elementary committee that are going to have parents, teachers, administrators, folks on there. Dale, I think, did you volunteer to be on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a group of people that kind of have a lot of input on that as we move forward. Otherwise, it's being done to them instead of being a part of it. And so we're going to be, you know, and really registration is what, 7-8 weeks from now? So that turns around pretty quick. And so we'll be working with that. So you can kind of look through. None of these are surprising to me. These are about the where I thought we would be. And so we're also looking at those that, you know, I'm not sending or unlikely. We're reaching out to those folks. And, you know, I will say, and I said this to our administrators when we met the other day and on Tuesday and yesterday, that we understand it's important. We want every kid back. We don't want to lose, and I make this statement quite often. We don't want to lose a kid. And we can't lose one more kid. But the reality is, we aren't in control of all of that. And so I put quite a bit of stress on my folks to do that. It's probably been good stress, but I have to be careful that I don't write it too hard. And so but I really appreciate our people's work on that. We're trying to do some things that'll make a difference. And so you can get a look at that, and that'll make a difference in what we do moving forward.
Good question.
Yes.
What is the start date preference? Oh, I see what that means. Never
Yeah.
mind. So start date, whether we start on this day scheduled a week later.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
And
Based on
so,
current
yeah, after Labor Day, that kind of thing. It's what's interesting is in the comments and things we get, there's so many like, oh, please, just take them back. I think if we would have put a thing on here, start 2 weeks earlier, it might have been, right? Just take them back and get them going. So, they realize that sometimes that's pretty difficult, thing to do. So, we appreciate that. So that's something opening next school year, we'll be working on that. We realize that we're gonna have to do some synchronous things and even asynchronous. We wanna make sure that available. We want our kids to be part of us. In fact, I didn't see if the newspaper came out today or it comes out, but one of the things I put that we're excited about the programming, we're gonna be able to continue. The High School Activity Association is committed to starting activities next fall for our kids. Frankly, I'm not excited about providing activities for kids in our hours. If you go down the hill to school and come back up, the law says we gotta take you. The law doesn't say we have to put you on varsity. The law doesn't those type of things, but I'm excited about the things we're gonna continue to offer for our kids. And frankly, in this situation, our kids may be doing synchronous stuff at home. It may be asynchronous as part of our ingenuity, our homeschool type things that we're doing, and if they are still our kids, we want to count them and we want them to be a part of us. We want to continue to offer programming, and I'll share a little bit about that shortly. Some of the things that we would like to see happen to engage those kids, and so they're ours. It's like I used to tell my students, and I would even tell my athletes when I was coached. I go, from the rest of your life, you're mine. When you do amazing things, I brag about you, you're mine. You goof up in your mind, and it's no matter what. So we want to expand our kids, but our kids are up here, and they aren't elsewhere. So, Woodland Park College, we're in the process of trying to clean it out, a space, some room for us in the bottom hallway, the new section of the building where when you go there, you're going to college, and so we're trying to involve some asynchronous primarily and some synchronous college classes that will augment our dual credit option. So we have that option that we pay for, then there's an option we can't pay for, and we have to be careful on how we label that, because if we use some wording, it means we have to pay for it. Some wording, so we have to be careful how we're doing. But I know Adams State has said $75 per credit hour, which is pretty good, and we're going to try to keep working with some other schools to try to do that. We hope to do some things with Emporia State for $100 credit hour, but out of state is not working for us right now, and with Emporia State. But we're really hoping UCCS and Pikes Peak will jump in. We've heard talking good game with us, but not a lot has really happened, and so we're hoping to be able to do. A lot of college will be synchronous and synchronous. When Nancy's daughter goes back to University of Colorado Boulder, she's going to go, and she's going to have a great time. At Thanksgiving, she's coming home, and she'll stay home, and so they'll be doing that online. There'll be some schools that'll start off online across the nation, and so there'll be some neat opportunities there. When they go down the hallway, it's going to be welcome to college, and it's gonna say Woodland Park College right on the wall, big 3-foot letters that go down. So we want our kids, but there's no reason for our kids to go elsewhere when we can do it here.
Steve, and I know we talked a little bit about this once, I apologize, but I'm just trying to understand the difference between this and what we're already doing with like the 110 and 115 English classes.
Right, so those classes, we have, the way it's written up is actually, we pay for those credit hours, and we have some money that comes in that takes care of that. And we wouldn't be able to do that for a kid taking 15 credit hours a year type thing. So if that's a teacher coming in, and since a lot of our teachers aren't qualified to do that,
right?
They're more than qualified, but they're qualified to do that.
Right.
We actually pay someone to come do that for us, so that we can and it works out for us to pay that person rather than charge more per credit hour. And if we had more of those people, so one of the things we talked about in our meet and confer is, wouldn't it be neat to be able to grow your own, to prepare some of our teachers so more of that can be done here? You know, we have the AP classes, we'll continue. It's not a secret, I'm not a fan of those because of the test and things at the end, and here, these are ours, they're gonna go with you, you
So
know?
this is, would there actually be a professor coming up from?
No,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
no, you're gonna go in, you're gonna take it online or
Online.
synchronous. There will be a professor, but it'll be
Oh,
like
gotcha.
your daughter did to finish off the school year.
Okay.
And so it's asynchronous and synchronous. We will still have our college people coming up to do what we've done before. And
But
it'd
we
be-
won't have to have an actual teacher from our high school in those classrooms, or would they
no,
still-
that could actually be covered by a para. And yeah, a really good one. And you know, we'll still be able to get some support and some help. But wouldn't it be neat to be able to take care of that college algebra, you know, for $75? Frankly, at K-State, so many of those kids, other than paying the money at Kansas State University or University of Kansas to take some of those entry classes, are sitting in a K-State dorm, taking it online at junior college, so they can get it over with in cheaper
Yeah.
and probably better help rather than having an actual teacher teaching it rather than a grad assistant. So we're excited. We're going to learn some things. There's going to be stuff we do right and stuff we do wrong with that, and the stuff that doesn't work, we'll figure it out and move forward. I don't know how many will take us up on it. You know, the kids are scheduled already. They're going to have to change their schedule. That's part of life. You know, kids change their schedule anyway, whether it be in high school or college. A lot of schedule changes. A little bit about the swimming pool. I'm excited about swimming pools opening up. What's the date on that?
15th.
15. Gonna open back up. Excited about that. You know, and in our pool, you know, what, 70% of our voters approve that. It's wonderful. We're able to have our swim teams. We have kids taking life savings course to be able to be lifeguards, and we have all our third graders. So eventually, all of our kids will be taught how to swim. It's so exciting for our community, you know, and frankly, my in-laws are excited to move up here because they have the pool. That's something they can do. When you're older, you're able to take water aerobics, and if you ever go over there during the day, you can see those and people swimming. It's a wonderful thing. I did hear recently, though, that one of our city folks have been asked by the city council to figure out how much it costs to shut the pool down and not use it anymore. That's just crazy. But you know, you're never going to make money on a pool, by the way, like you don't make money on parks. And we lose as much money on Memorial Park as we do the swim pool. I hope that's just, it's been asked by a couple of new city council members, people actually here who haven't lived here as long as I have, and that have made it on the city council. So we hope that's not the case, that they'll do that. There's too many wonderful things that happen. I was just visiting some people from Kansas today. They're coming up Monday. They have a cabin they go to stay, but part of what the exciting thing for them is they are swimmers, and that's what they do. They're older citizens that work, and they're excited. They asked them, is the pool going to be open? And I said, I believe so, soon. And but you're gonna have to schedule it online right now because of the COVID rules. But we hope that that's something that is not being taken serious by all the city council, because that would just be devastating to our community and frankly to what we do in our schools. So if you get a chance to reach out to those folks, I will continue to try to reach out, do my coffee thing, and keep going there.
Well, I know that Gwen had talked to you about this too, but just to localize it, I mean, obviously the school gave that property for that pool to be put on, so I would feel that we should have some input into
You would
the
think
closure of it, or at least.
we should. And so what we did on that was we traded out. There was we traded out some land for some for money and those type of things. And in fact, some of the money, part of it, we want to be a good partner with our city. So that money that came into us, we're actually putting up some signs, electronic signage that they're going to be able to display things on as well. And so that's one of those things. It's a symbiotic relationship where we're able to help one another.
Right, and provides classes to our students to learn to swim
Classes,
as well, so they're not just
teams.
closing down the pool, they're closing down activities and classes that we're providing to our children in the community, so.
A lot of things. It's an important part of a community our size. And so, we don't have a contract, but we have MOU agreements and so, but those aren't be able to held up in the court of law, but it's an agreement that we work through and so, we put a lot of money into that thing. We're the side, with our, people have donated a lot of money for like some of our electronic signage inside, the scoreboards, the district did as well. So it's just not a wise thing. Frankly, it's not if they were closed, it would have an extreme lack of integrity to do so after 70% of the people said, let's do this. And so
Well, I guess I would like to recommend if that goes any further, because I know, I did listen into the last council meeting, and I wrote a letter as well personally, but I think we should talk later about this, if they start moving forward on that closure, that we as a board maybe have a voice and common voice that we provide some input.
Most definitely.
Yeah, it wasn't brought up. That was not brought up in we had a meeting of our city council and our county commissioners and the fire department and us. And that was not brought up at all by the city, the possibility of shutting down the pool. That was pretty sneaky, to be, I'm gonna have to trust that, wiser minds will prevail. And it's political grandstanding, but by a couple of people, but,
Well, a couple of people stated that that's why they ran, was because of the pool.
which
For the
is,
meeting.
yeah.
So,
And I don't think most people even realizing you vote. And COVID had an impact on the vote, and I can see there be some great retaliation up to and including a recall if some of those things happen. So I think that takes 850 signatures. I think there's a couple of people that would probably get those in 2 days. Okay, summer activities and fall sports, like I said, they're moving forward with that. We're excited. The High School Activity Association is committed to move forward to that. Some of the emails I've shared with these guys that we get for them, it gets a little confusing, but they're moving forward. And so we're moving forward. We have a 4-phase phase in of what we're doing with our kids, and our coaches are working on it, and they're being good with that. So we appreciate that. We needed to get our kids back and engaged in our activities and our athletics, and so we're working on that. One of the things we did notice is we have a lot of people all of a sudden they're up on our. We don't, that are walking on our track, which is not harmful. It's being on our football field that's harmful. And so we're going to work on some signage and try to take care of some of those things. And I was over at Manitou this last week and saw a lot of people on the track working around. That was kind of neat. And we have people on our track, like I said, that's not going to kill us. It's it's people riding bikes on our track, people who are out on the football field, because that thing, we put a lot of chemical on that thing right now. And if you're out there rolling around in the chemical, that's not a great thing. So we're being a little careful with that as we move forward. Guys, I had an opportunity to visit with Mort Dixon, and he was so excited about our new hire. And he said, congratulations on your new hire. It's going to be great. He's heard the guys' band and choirs, and he's judged them, and they've been great. And so I just thought that, when you have a Hall of Fame music teacher who's got the auditorium named after him, and he's excited, and he feels like we're going the right direction with that. And so we're, and he spent some time with him already, back and forth on Facebook, and of course they'll get together later. And so that really did my heart a lot of good to hear Mort say that. He said that in front of a lot of people. So online, a big meeting, but it's a neat deal that we're doing there. Guys, just a quick on legislative. Normally we wouldn't have a legislative report because legislation should be over. Hopefully they will hope to be over Friday. Yeah, we talked about a little about the COVID funds, and you can see that it's got to be significant uses and not on our budget March 27th. But we're going to get more ruling on that probably tomorrow as that comes out. School Finance Act looked like it's going to be not very much different from what Brian presented today. And so the one thing we will have to watch out though for is as we're going along here is next January when the legislature comes back. And they look, and who knows what the financial situation of the state will be, that they may make some cuts right in the middle. So we have to be aware of that, be prepared to make some adjustments if we need to. And we hope that does take place, but that was brought up today in one of my meetings I was in. So best grants looks like they're going to keep going for about $60 million moving forward. They're trying to avoid the cuts to at-risk kids if they can in this whole thing. There won't be any rural dollars available this year. We thought for a while that when all this, we thought before COVID hit, we thought there might be, but that was iffy. And now what I heard today, that just isn't going to happen. We do have that new governor money coming, not a whole lot, and we don't know how it works. So we'll see what happens with that. It was really interesting visiting with Senator Benedict today, and they are going to ask to do a whole lot of state assessments for the coming year as well. A couple different reasons. One of them is what does it really measure when we didn't have our kids for the whole quarter this year? And then the other part is it takes a lot of April. It slows kind of everything down. And consider we lost time this year, why would we lose more time? So there's a pretty good chance that has to go through the Department of Education in Washington. So they're asking to hold off again on those. There's also an opportunity there because that really didn't always tell us what we need to know. Is that really effective anyway? So that it gives them a chance to look at that.
You know how much that costs? I mean, I'm
I don't-
assuming there's a budget.
There is, and I've been told that number. I forget. I know in Kansas it was 17 million.
Yeah.
And so it's a large amount of money. But it's a large amount of money for some testing company, and of course there's some politics in that as well. So this policing bill is something that Beth may be watching a little bit as it's moved forward. But one of the things I'm really concerned about on that is that there's a whole lot of things I'm concerned about. But our SROs having to wear body cameras, and we have little privacy things that are issues, and so they're going to have to work through a lot of that before. I anticipate there will be a policing bill, but I hope it gets worked around to where there's common sense involved in that as well. And so it's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on and definitely impact Woodland Park Police and our Sheriff's Department. So the whistleblower bill that there's out there that I need to say I got to dig into a little deeper, but a whistleblower on unsafe situations. Right now we have our ESY special needs kids coming back in, and if you've ever tried to keep a mask on some of those kids, good luck. And and they could say, well, that's unsafe. Well, maybe, but who makes those decisions? And right now, it's there are a lot of they need to work that out, but they've only got to like Friday, and so it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that. I'll give you an update on that when it happens. And of course, Friday is the day they're trying to close. But I don't know if they'll make that happen, but I think they'll be pretty darn close. They're kind of motivated at this point to make that happen. And so that's kind of what's happening in the legislature
I
right
think it'd
now.
be difficult even to get any 17-year-old kid wearing this.
Yeah, but I social distancing, for example. If I'm 17, good luck with that. I'm sure those boyfriends and girlfriends are staying well apart from one another. And so it's
We will always wish.
yeah, it's against the law. But here's the neat thing is Teller County's done a really nice job of flattening that curve. We've not had new cases. And one of the things that we were really concerned about is Memorial Day. Memorial Day, everything came through, and we're going to have a spike. We've had the 2-week incubation period and nothing. And so that's been a really good sign. I had an opportunity to meet with the director of our hospital up here yesterday. And we spent some time, we were talking a little bit about that and also talking about some of the concussion protocol. They had some opportunity to help us there. But that it just didn't happen. And he had no problem shaking my hand and doing whatever because it just is flattening out like crazy. And so that's a really good sign for us, and it's a good sign for us as we get ready to start a school year next year. And so that's a good thing.
All right,
That's my report. Any questions?
good deal, yes, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, next we move to board action items. The first thing is the supplemental budget resolution number 2, which I have here and will read. Is there anything that you need to say about it, Brian, before I read?
This is just allowing us to put the coronavirus relief fund dollars of $1,117,040 in the current fiscal year to allow for expenditure prior to this fiscal year end.
Exactly as you had described. Any questions on that before I read the resolution?
One other thing, it obviously won't be all spent, so then we'll carry it over as deferred revenue into next fiscal.
Okay, hearing no questions. Supplemental budget resolution number 2, fiscal year 2019 and 2020, in accordance with CRS 2244-10-5, the Board of Education of Woodland Park School, RE2, hereby authorizes the expenditures of additional revenue for fiscal year 2019-2020 according to the following distribution. The designated purposed grant funds, the federal revenue is listed for the coronavirus relief fund grant of $1,117,040, and the expenditures as listed, GES, CRF supplies, and they are all $186,173. CES, which is Columbine Elementary, CRF supplies, Summit Elementary, CRF supplies, Woodland Park Middle School, CRF supplies, Woodland Park High School, CRF supplies, and district CRF supplies. And the total is the $1,117,040. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Woodland Park School District RE2 adopts these resolutions to approximate expenditures according to the above distribution. I need a motion to approve.
So
Second.
Austin,
Aye.
Dottie. Aye. Graber.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lefty.
Aye. Okay, and the next thing on the board action items is canceling the July regular Board of Education meeting. I need a motion to cancel the July regular Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Second that.
Austin,
Aye.
Dottie. Aye. Graber.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lefty.
Aye. Okay, and finally, we will move into executive session. At this time, I need a motion for us to adjourn to executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024F.
So moved.
Second.
Austin,
Aye.
Dottie. Aye. Graber.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lefty.
Yes, we can take about a 5-minute break. I do have to leave no later than 8:30. So we've got a timeline. Thank you. Yep.
Tina, thanks for doing that.
Thank you, Tina.
Oh, but now that worked out.